Welcome to Brainwave Exchange, the podcast that delves into the minds of fascinating individuals, uncovering their unique journeys and distilling the wisdom they've gained along the way. In this episode, we're going to talk with Anthony Torres, the founder of Bit Hippie. I've known Anthony for the better part of a decade now, and he is generally all around a good guy. Great ideas, really wants to try and help make the world a better place. One of the things that you're going to hear about in this podcast is the idea that creating accountability for yourself and your goals will help you achieve those goals. And I've been a part of Anthony's accountability group now for a couple of years, and I can say that it has definitely helped him attain his goals. It has helped me attain some of mine when I've participated in that group. And I hope you all enjoy what he has to say here today. So please enjoy episode 1 of the Brainwave Exchange. Good afternoon. We are here today with Anthony Torres, the founder of Bit Hippie. Anthony, it's nice to have you with us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing all right. So tell us a little bit about Bit Hippie, what it is and how you came up with the idea.
Uh, so, Bithippie represents my personal projects, like this brand that I'm trying to build. Like all good ideas, it came when I was standing in the shower, and I was just trying to think, what do I want to call this work that I'm doing? And I picked the name because it was sort of represents my interests both as a technologist writing software for a bunch of different applications, and then also I'm big into the environment. I'm big into sustainability. I'm always like to just give to people. I like the idea of bartering, that sort of thing. So I smashed those two concepts together. I came up with Bit Hippie, and then my tagline is sort of at the intersection of technology, wellness, and sustainability.
That's really cool. So you're leaning into that sort of traditional hippie vibe, right? Where you think about the hippies of the 60s and 70s, they were the real sort of environmental group who were a little bit anti-establishment, but really trying to make the world kind of a better place for themselves and potentially future generations.
Yeah, that clicked with me. It's what I do naturally, so it seemed like a reasonable fit.
That's really cool. And then the bit piece there is obviously leading into the technology part of that equation.
Right. So yes, if you were to look at the Bit Hippie logo, uh, you'll see that it's the bit part is all futuristic. It's rigid. It's straight lines. It's supposed to represent technology, and then the hippie part of the logo is all earthy. We've got leaves for the eyes. It's curvy, and uh, it's the blend of those two concepts is what's interesting to me.
Very good, very good. And what do you hope to achieve? What does success look like for you with Bit Hippie?
That's a good question. I don't know that I've really thought about it too much, but just thinking on my feet here, um, success for me would be, I think what I actually want the most is I want to make sure that the future that I set up for my kids is like, what's the word? I don't know. It should enable them to do the things that they want to do and have the experiences they want to have. I like that expression that we borrow the earth from our future generations, and so like the
Yeah.
types of work I want to do, the types of projects I want to participate in, um, it's it's all in support of that ideal, like, better future. Specifically because I've got the kids now, which now I'm more motivated than ever to like do something about it. Yeah, so if I can spend my time mm, contributing in a positive way to like initiatives that help, again, with sustainability, overall wellness, and using tech not as a way of life, but to enable some of the other things that, like the real stuff, like that to me is how I see Bit Hippie being a successful endeavor.
That's a very worthy goal you have there, and I hope that you do succeed.
Thank you.
Because this world is in need of some improvements in a lot of places, and every little bit that you can do to help will be fantastic.
Yeah, and I like to be the kind of person who does something. Like, I see a lot of people. I spend too much time on Reddit, but I see a lot of people talking about how bad things are, and then I always ask like, "And what are we doing about it?" And that's where the conversation dies down. So I've decided to take it into my own hands and do something about it.
A very very worthy cause. So one of the things you've got going on right now is an application called PQ,
Yep,
and
that's right.
the intent behind this is to try and help people improve themselves through tracking their own progress towards self-set goals and be held accountable by sort of self-selected peer groups.
Yeah, yeah. So PQ. Well, I'll back up a little bit here.
Sure.
Um, I've got a ton of interests. I have way too many interests. And um, part of the reason I built PQ is I needed a place to keep track of it, which there's a many ways to keep track of things like, your to-do lists or whatever. Um, but a to-do list in and of itself doesn't mean anything on there is going to get done, or it doesn't mean that, like some items on a to-do list can be atomic in nature, and then some are like just monsters, right? And you need to deconstruct that into smaller parts. And thankfully, my time as an engineer has taught me how to take epics and deconstruct them into bite-sized pieces. And so I thought for my own personal needs, I've got these big ambitions. I've got lots of things that I want to do. What if I were to treat my home life a little bit more like my work life? And, you know, um, some engineers might be familiar with the OKR goal setting concept. I thought I could do that same thing personally. Um, but even that isn't enough. So just because you know how to do something still might not mean you are going to get it done. And that's where the accountability comes in. So yeah, you said it exactly right. You have a self-selected peer group, and what I was able to do with PQ was write down my goals and then share them. And now people that care about me will check in because they know it's important to me to do the things I said I was going to do.
Right. And have you found there to be some sort of evidence to back up the fact that just putting something out into the world or stating your goals is more likely to help you achieve them?
Yeah. There's the anecdotal evidence, and then there's like the research. If you go to my um, PQ landing page on the Bithippie website, you'll see the numbers that have been quantified by some research institution on like the percent likelihood of something happening based on whether you say, when and tell somebody and have accountability appointments, that sort of thing. But just anecdotally speaking, I've finished more this year than I think I ever have in the past years. And those things were not small. And those things were also very, I guess you could say, disjointed. Like I'm able to do a lot of different things that are complicated. Um, I'm getting it done, and I'm feeling really good about the progress. And I have a strong suspicion that it is because I have my recurring weekly accountability appointments, and I've written it down, and my brain and my subconscious is constantly thinking about, you know, what do I need to do to move that thing forward? And so the analogy here would be like the moment you buy a new car, all of a sudden you see that car on the road all the time, whereas you never have before. Well, the same thing is true with your goals, right? Like these opportunities present themselves all the time, but if your brain is filtering it out because you're not thinking about, hey, uh, I have this crazy idea. Here's like a real example. I have a crazy idea that I want to take some cherry slabs that I want to build a desk. I want to build an epoxy desk. And then all of a sudden, I started seeing opportunities. Like my cousin got an Alaskan sawmill, and he goes, "Hey, you want to come down and play with this?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's start milling slabs for the desk." And then turns out another friend works at like a lumber supply place, and I'm like, "Hey, he probably knows how I can get these things kiln dried and planed." And like, if I wasn't thinking about, "Hey, I want to build a desk," and I met him and he told me he worked at a lumber mill, like those two things would have never connected, and it would have just been an introduction.
Yep.
And so, um, by putting it on paper and talking about it regularly, your brain does not filter those opportunities from your consciousness, and then you can take action if it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, right. Talk a little bit about the accountability piece. How do you think that that plays into it as well?
Um, I so I have a value board in my living room, and one of the things on that value board, separate from this accountability question, is dependable. And it's important to me that when I say I'm going to do something, that I do it. Like that's just core to my values, my identity, right? And so for this accountability thing, when you say to somebody, "I'm going to do X," if dependability is a thing that's important, like then I'm even if it's 10 times harder to do it now, like what's the example I want to use? Like if it would be easier for me to do it in a week, but I said I'm going to get it done today, like I'm going to deal with that extra friction and struggle because it's my word.
Mm-hmm.
So that has been super helpful for me to stop the procrastination. Like I'm like, hey, my logical brain says if I want X, then I need to do Y. And then if I don't tell anybody, hey, I need to go do Y, then I don't need to be dependable. I don't create that like inner sense of conflict and urgency to finish the thing I need to do. And then maybe it'll slip 1 or 2 weeks, or maybe it'll slip a year, or like maybe it'll never happen. So the accountability piece has been huge for me because when I say I'm going to do something, it's no longer an if, right? Like it's a must.
Mm-hmm. And who do you think are the types of people that would benefit the most from taking part in something like PQ?
That's a really good question. I think it's for the people who know what they want. Maybe they don't know how to get it, or they do know how to get it, but they need a little bit of encouragement because the thing that they want isn't a freebie. Like it takes work to get it. The tool it's sort of like agnostic to the specific want, So in there, it could be I want to go on a specific kind of adventure, or I want to make something that's complicated, or I want to just make sure I'm meditating every day because my brain is a crazy place and I need to zen out every once in a while, right? Like the the, the tool will help you articulate whatever the things that are kind of rattling around in your head, whatever that list is. You put it out on a sheet of paper, and then you tell somebody about it.
And the general sales pitch here is that by, as we sort of talked about, by doing these things, by putting it out into the world and making that commitment to other people that you probably don't want to let down, that you'll actually start making this progress towards your goals, and you will eventually achieve those goals and then set new goals, and the cycle will continue until you've reached the peak version of yourself, hence peak you.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. That's the hope, anyway. The numbers on the website will, like, I'll get to the punchline, which is that if you have that specific accountability appointment with a person, that when you will deliver the thing that you said you're going to do, you go to 95% chance of it happening. Like that's a big number.
That's a pretty high percentage. Yep.
Yeah.
Give me odds like that in the stock market, and I'd be a rich man.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So as we go through more of this series, we're going to dive in a lot more into kind of the technical nitty gritty of PQ and sort of its natural evolution from where it is now to where you think it will be most useful to the most number of people. And I want to just kind of give the very brief overview of the technical side of it, just so that people can be aware of where it is now and where you might think it's going, and sort of the journey that we're going to be taking over the next number of weeks through this podcast.
What do you want to start with on the tech side?
So give us the overview of what it is now, how it's built, what it does,
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
where you want it to go to.
I built the first prototype of PQ using a low-code app builder called Retool. The whole thing lives there. The database lives there. The front end lives there. I sort of skipped the middle tier, right? There's no API layer yet. And I've been putting it in the hands of a small like alpha group of users. There's about 10 of them right now. And I've gotten some feedback about, well, what it can do today is the quarterly goal setting, right? I call that the life sheet. So that's like the high level stuff about you as a human, like how's your health, how's your finances, what goals do you have, what's your level of like personal fulfillment, what are some areas you want to focus on for the next quarter. So it's got all that stuff. Then it's also got a section, so that's quarterly, but as we talked about earlier, there's also the need to check in regularly with someone, so you make sure you kind of stay the course. And that I have built this weekly journal. You can actually write in it every day if you wanted to. There's nothing preventing it, but I go in once a week, and I have it's broken into two kind of concepts. The first one is the metrics, and so that's like numerical driven things that you want to track week over week. And then there's the like free form text, and I call it thoughts to share and thoughts to keep. And so the idea here is now in my weekly check-in, I like write my numbers down for how I'm doing on the things that are important to me. And then I also write in a little free text, like, here's the stuff I want to tell my group about. And then in the notes, the thoughts to keep, it's like, and here's some stuff that's personal to me that I don't want to forget about when I go back and, let's say I go back in a year and see some of the old stuff I've been up to. Like, I want to have that somewhere. So I have a separate section just for private thoughts. So I have quarterly goal setting, weekly check-ins, and then I wanted to add this gamified component. So I added challenges, and the idea behind challenges, whether it be like you want to kickstart a habit, or you want to stop doing something, or maybe you just want to do something different and shake it up. Like the idea behind the challenges, again, it's just a metric, right? You can say like how some of the challenges I have right now are how many burpees can you do in 7 minutes, and it's just a number you write down. And then within the challenge, there's your leaderboard and your streak counter for continuous days doing whatever the challenge is, just to make it fun. And then some people are competitive by nature, so let's lean into that and give them an option.
Yeah. Gamification of anything is huge. Cool. And so where do you want this application to go technically in the future?
Yeah, great. So what I was saying earlier, and I stopped for a minute, was I had this in the hands of a few alpha users, and the feedback that I got was that it's too much too fast, right? Like now, when I design PQ, it's every field is actually optional. So it appears to be too much because there's like, you could do any of those three things that I just mentioned. And the life sheet could take you hours to fill out, depending on how much of a deep dive you want to do on yourself. Um, but it could also take 10 minutes if you only want to fill in like, here's the areas I want to focus on for the upcoming quarter, and you fill in like nutrition and relationships, right? So the perception from the user's perspective is there's too much. And so what I want to do for the move from the prototype to the MVP, based on what my users are telling me, is I want to actually have a sort of an onboarding experience where it's probing people for subsets of that data. And then when they eventually graduate to the point where they've made it through the onboarding, it's like, okay, now we put you into the tool PQ, and I can take some of those answers and pre-fill your life sheet. And then you go in and you're like, you're not looking at this whole empty canvas and all like, where do I even start? It's more like, hey, you start right here. So I'm trying to break the prototype into a like graduating like, again, probably gamifying it somewhere. You start at level 0 and the questions are very simple, and then you move your way up to like level 10, and that's when you unlock the ability to participate in challenges. And between 0 and 10, you've slowly learned the tool. So now when you come onto the site, you're like, okay, I've done the life sheet, I've got my journal figured out, now I want to go play, I'm going to go into challenge. It's just more familiar to you. So that's what I think needs to happen next.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty reasonable way to get people involved. And then, so we're going to go through, I imagine, step by step, each one of those. I think you said 10 steps to get to the sort of end of the journey. And we're going to do kind of one step at a time, lead people through, kind of show them what that step is, how we're developing the app to take you step by step. And each episode will bring you along that journey until, if you're here at the end, you'll be a fully fledged PQ user and getting the best out of yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly right. One of the things that I'm excited about with Retool is that they have both a desktop and mobile app building experience. And right now, my prototype is purely for the web, and you can technically do it on your phone, but it's a little bit clunky. And so as I move from this prototype to the MVP, I'm probably going to emphasize mobile a little bit more, especially for the onboarding experience, because that's honestly where I think most people spend their time. And I don't want to exclude the folks who really never sit at a desk from filling this stuff out.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Mobile is the way of the world. And it's nice if you can use something like a Retool and not have to write your own mobile app from scratch.
Yeah,
That's a nice little
I
benefit.
went down that path briefly. It's like, nope, not doing it.
All right. Well, I will say to the listeners, if any of this sounds interesting to you, we're going to add links in the show notes to the Bit Hippie website. You can learn more about PQ, and we hope to see you along the journey to unlocking your full potential as we bring you along with PQ's development. Anthony, any final words you want to add?
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Jason and I were kind of talking about how we can get users to learn a little bit more about the tool, and he quickly offered to help me do this podcast. So I'm pretty grateful and excited to have you here, Jason. And I'm looking forward to seeing some of the cool stuff we get to build, the people we get to meet. Who knows where this is going to take us, but I'm very optimistic.
As am I. This is going to be a really fun adventure. Well, Anthony, thank you for the time today, and we will wrap here and pick it up next time.
Sounds good.
All right.